This boy was left to die by his own tribe. But he didn't just survive, he conquered the world. His name is Genghis Khan. At one point, he ruled more land than any man in history. He united warring tribes, created a ruthless army, and destroyed entire kingdoms. But here's the twist. He also built trade routes, promoted religious freedom, and connected the East and West like never before. And today, over 16 million men carry his DNA. This is the story of how an outcast boy became the universal ruler of the world. Imagine a world with no center. Just a vast rolling sea of grass under an endless sky, filled with nomadic tribes locked in a centuries-long cycle of raids, kidnappings, and blood feuds. This was the Mongolian steppe of the 12th century. Life here was violent, unpredictable, and often brutally short. Alliances shifted like the seasons, and loyalty was a currency easily spent. There was no Mongolia, only a fractured mess of clans: the Tatars, the Merkits, the Naimans, the Karayats, and Temujin's own small clan, all just trying to survive and get the upper hand. It was into this chaos around 1162 that Temujin was born. His father, Yesugei, was a minor clan chief, respected but not nearly powerful enough to escape the vicious politics of the steppe. The world Temujin was born into wasn't one of nations or laws, but of raw power, where a single act of violence could wipe out a family forever. This was the world he was destined to burn down and build again from the ashes. Temujin's first great test came when he was only 9 years old. His father, Yesugei, was poisoned by rival Tatars while sharing a meal. A pretty common way to take out an enemy in a land with few poisons but many grudges. With Yesugei gone, his small group of followers saw no reason to stick around and support his widow and her young kids. In a stunning betrayal, the clan just left them, taking their herds and leaving a woman and 7 children to survive on their own on the open steppe. This wasn't just abandonment, it was a death sentence. Survival became a brutal, day-to-day struggle. Temujin's mother, Holun, a woman of incredible strength, taught her children how to get by, foraging for roots and fishing. The constant hunger and desperation of these years scarred the young boy. It was during this time he committed his first killing, slaying his own half-brother, Bekter, in a fight over a fish. A grim reminder of the harsh law of survival that ruled their world. This brutal act showed the emergence of a ruthless pragmatism that would define the rest of his life. The world hadn't shown him any mercy, and he learned fast that to survive, you had to be willing to do whatever it took. His troubles were far from over. As a young man, he was captured and enslaved by the same clan that had abandoned his family, forced to wear a wooden collar like an animal. This humiliation only fueled his determination. He eventually pulled off a daring escape, a moment that became a major turning point. He would no longer be a victim of fate. The boy who was hunted, enslaved, and left for dead had survived his call to adventure. He had looked into the abyss and chose not to fall, but to climb. He would reclaim his father's status, but his ambition was already growing far beyond that. He would build a new world, one where loyalty was stronger than blood, a world where he would never be betrayed again. An outcast with no power and no followers couldn't survive alone. Temujin knew this. His first and most important step back into the world of tribal politics was to find the allies his father had made. He traveled to the court of Togrul, Khan of the powerful Karait tribe, and his father's sworn blood brother, or Andasis. He presented Togrul with the sable cloak, a prized part of his wife Borte's dowry, pledged his loyalty, and in return, got the protection of a powerful patron. His personal life also became a spark for his rise. Shortly after he married Borta, she was kidnapped by the rival Merkit tribe. This raid was both a personal tragedy and a political test. Refusing to accept this, Temujin scrambled for help. He went not only to Togrul, but also to a childhood friend who had become a leader himself, Jamuka. Together with their combined forces, Temujin launched a successful raid, rescued Borta, and completely wiped out the Merkits. This victory was Temujin's crossing of the threshold. He wasn't just a beggar asking for help anymore. He was a warrior who could lead and inspire others. His daring rescue of his wife earned him a reputation for being relentless and brave. And warriors started flocking to his side, drawn to his charisma and his success. For a while, he and Jamuka joined their camps, becoming a formidable power together. This was a time of learning and growth for Temujin. He watched how Jamuka led, how alliances were kept, and how power worked in their complex world. But the very success that brought him followers also planted the seeds of a future fight. He was building his own power base, and on the steppes there couldn't be two masters. His friendship with Jamuka, once his greatest strength, was about to become his greatest challenge. But for now, Temujin had a foothold. He had an army, powerful allies, and most importantly, a growing belief in his own destiny. The outcast had returned not as a beggar, but as a real contender. As Temujin's power grew, so did the distance between him and Jamuka. The two men had fundamentally different ideas for the future of the Mongols. Jamuka was a traditionalist, a believer in the old aristocratic order where power belonged to the highborn. Temujin, shaped by his own life as an outcast, was a radical. He promoted men based on their skill and loyalty, not their family name. He surrounded himself with talented people, no matter their clan or social status, creating a fiercely loyal and effective inner circle. This merit-based approach was revolutionary and a huge threat to the old guard that Jamuka represented. The split was inevitable, and the two friends became bitter rivals, their competition dragging the steppes into a sprawling civil war. This was Temujin's road of trials, a long, brutal fight, not just against Jamuka, but against the entire system of tribal division that had cursed his people for centuries. He faced betrayals and defeats that would have broken a lesser man. But with every challenge, he adapted and innovated. It was on the battlefield that Temujin's genius really started to emerge. He was a master of psychological warfare, using spies to spread rumors and making his army seem larger by having each soldier light multiple fires at night. His military organization was revolutionary. He completely broke up the old tribal units, the source of endless feuds, and reorganized his warriors into a decimal system. Units of 10, 100, and 1,000. This new structure made his warriors loyal directly to him, not to some clan chief, and it allowed for incredible discipline and coordination. He perfected tactics that crushed his enemies, even when he was outnumbered. The Mongols became masters of the feigned retreat, tricking their enemies into a disorganized chase only to turn and surround them in a storm of arrows. Their cavalry could cover huge distances with incredible speed, launching lightning-fast surprise attacks that left their opponents reeling. He waged war with a single terrifying purpose: total victory. He knew that a defeated enemy left alive was just a future threat. So he adopted a policy of complete annihilation for anyone who resisted him, while absorbing the survivors of conquered tribes into his own growing nation. This mix of pure ruthlessness and smart inclusion was a powerful tool for unification. He wasn't just conquering tribes, he was erasing old identities and forging a new, single Mongol identity in their place. The final act of Temujin's long war of unification came with his showdown against the last of the great rival tribes, the Naimans, who had given shelter to his arch-rival, Jamuka. In 1204, in a decisive battle, Temujin's disciplined and modern army crushed the Naiman forces. Jamuka was captured and brought to his former friend. In a final dramatic moment, legend says Temujin offered to renew their brotherhood. Jamuka, ever the traditionalist, refused, saying there could only be one sun in the sky. He asked for a noble's death, one without shedding blood, and Temujin gave it to him. With his greatest rival gone, the path was clear. 2 years later, in 1206, on the banks of the Onan River, a great assembly of the tribes, a Kurultai, was called. Here, the chieftains of the now united Mongol peoples gathered. They proclaimed Temujin the supreme leader of all the steppe, giving him the title of Genghis Khan, meaning universal ruler. This was his transformation. The outcast boy named Temujin was gone, replaced by the fearsome figure of Genghis Khan, the leader of a new unified Mongol nation. This was more than a name change. It was the birth of an empire. He immediately started reforms to cement his power and stop the old chaos from returning. He established the Yasa, a secret code of law that, among other things, forbade kidnapping women, regulated theft, and demanded absolute loyalty to the Khan. He ordered the creation of a writing system, set up trade routes, and organized a society built not on clan loyalty, but on military and administrative efficiency. He hadn't just conquered the tribes, he had completely reorganized Mongol society, turning it into a disciplined military state, ready for a purpose beyond the steppe. As Genghis Khan, he returned to his people not just as a unifier, but as the architect of their destiny. Having ended the endless internal wars, he now looked outward. His new Mongol nation was basically a massive army, and that energy needed to go somewhere. Conquest wasn't just about ambition, it was a strategic necessity. It brought in loot to reward his followers, kept his powerful army busy, and secured the vital trade routes that were the lifeblood of his empire. His rule was simple and absolute: submit or be destroyed. When he sent trade envoys to the neighboring Khwarezmian Empire and they were murdered, his response was swift and apocalyptic. The invasion that followed was unlike anything the world had ever seen. It showed the full, terrifying power of the Mongol war machine he had built. The Mongol army was a force of incredible mobility and discipline. Whole armies could cross deserts thought to be impassable, showing up where they were least expected. Their command structure, which gave lower-level commanders the flexibility to take initiative, was a revolutionary idea. But their greatest strength was their ability to adapt. The Mongols were nomadic horsemen, but when they came up against the great walled cities of Persia and China, they didn't get stuck. Instead, they learned. They captured engineers from conquered lands, forced them to build siege engines, catapults, battering rams, and trebuchets, and then used that new technology on the next city. They mastered siege warfare as quickly as they had mastered fighting on the open steppe. This was combined with brutal psychological warfare. Cities were given a chance to surrender. Those that did were often spared and absorbed into the empire. Those that resisted faced total annihilation, their people massacred down to the last soul. a deliberate policy of terror designed to convince the next city that fighting back was pointless. The power of Genghis Khan wasn't just in his armies, but in the fear that ran ahead of them. He had returned to his people with the ultimate gift, a unified nation. Now he would lead that nation to conquer the world, proving that the harsh lessons of his childhood, loyalty, ruthlessness, and an unbreakable will to win, could be applied on a global scale. Genghis Khan's journey from a penniless outcast to the ruler of the largest land empire in history is nothing short of legendary. Through sheer willpower, military brilliance, and an unmatched understanding of fear and loyalty, he united the Mongols and changed the world. His legacy is deeply complex, feared as a brutal conqueror by many, yet admired as a visionary leader by others. Despite the violence of his campaigns, the empire he built brought stability through the Pax Mongolica, enabling safer trade along the Silk Road and connecting east and west like never before. He promoted religious tolerance, enforced a universal law, and laid the groundwork for a more connected world. In the end, Genghis Khan was more than just a conqueror. He was a force that reshaped history, tearing down barriers and leaving behind a new, interconnected world.